Viewers, the Modi government has just completed its first 50 days in office and has publicized the initiatives it has announced to ensure India prospers. But even as the government released its blueprint, a rash of gloomy news on the economic front has raised apprehensions that despite the NDA's best intentions, growth might in fact be slowing. Over the next hour, we will spell out and dissect the symptoms to decode the story behind the numbers. What we're going to do, viewers, is that we're going to first analyze each one of these symptoms, and we're going to have hopefully an invigorating talk about this. The first symptom that we've picked on are the GDP numbers. Now, there are various forecasts, and each one of them seems to present that the GDP is going to be below what is projected by the government. The NDA put it at 7.1%, but CRISIL and IMF have both sort of put it a little under that shade. Now, there are some reasons. I'm going to ask the experts, but we put three up. Weak domestic demand, below normal monsoon, some people are saying, and slowing global growth. Now let's throw this open. Let me begin with Surjit Bhalla, economist and former member of the EAC, PM. Mr. Bhalla, do you believe that we're in the economic doldrums, that growth is actually slowing, and we are going to have a problem?
Well, the first part is absolutely correct. You don't need a weatherman to tell you that the growth is slowing. Growth has slowed. The national accounts data, the CSO, has come out at 5.8. It was at 8.2. Now, you had mentioned 8.2% just a year ago.
Yeah.
You had mentioned three reasons: weak domestic demand, monsoon, and slowing global growth.
Yeah.
And I'll be very amiss if I didn't point out the following: that the monsoon is an exaggerated effect. Clearly, it affects growth, but it's not something that will really affect the GDP growth down to 5.8 or down to 5.5 or whatever number you may have in mind.
Right.
Slowing global growth is an absolutely important phenomena, but you haven't mentioned the major factor, the key factor, in my opinion, behind the slowdown in domestic growth. So I fully acknowledge that global growth has slowed down. I fully acknowledge that domestic demand is weak, but we need to find out, why is domestic demand weak?
Yes.
And I think the domestic demand is weak, a major part of the economic slowdown, and that will also tell you as to what is needed for the recovery, is the abnormally high interest rates that the RBI MPC has followed until the Ujit Patel Acharya regime ended, which basically ended in October of last year. You have to remember that in July of last year, the RBI under Patel Acharya raised interest rates.
Indeed.
Because they thought that growth was accelerating and that inflation was accelerating. So I think, look, everywhere around the world, Rahul, except in a country called India, but I hope that is changing, everywhere around in the world, the Fed just cut interest rates, etc. Why do they cut interest rates? Because growth is slowing. Whether you go to Timbuktu, or you go to Thailand, or you go to Germany, or you go anywhere, the number one issue in economics for explanation of growth acceleration and growth slowdown is basically the level of interest rates. And by that I mean, obviously, real interest rates.
Right.
Why that is not discussed in India is a topic I suggest that you take over for your next assignment.
Well, let me bring you in, Mr. Gurcharan Das, needs no introduction, columnist and author. I want to ask you, let's pick up from where Surjit Bhalla has left off. Now, why would the RBI's big intellectual brains get it so wrong about projections when it comes to growth? Is it because the numbers and there's been a lot of talk about the numbers, and the basis of the projections.
There's been no controversy on inflation.
No. I'm talking about the growth forecast numbers. He said that they kept the interest rates down because they felt that because they felt that we're going to head towards big growth. Why do you think they got it wrong?
Well, I think it's partly an obsession with inflation.
Okay.
They see their first role as being the one which is to control inflation rather than promote growth. And even when they see inflation coming down, there are all these ghosts in their heads about the fact. I mean, they're almost like a politician in a democracy. A politician in a democracy is more scared of inflation or onions or whatever than anything else. And I think that could be one of their obsession, but fortunately,
but there are valid reasons to be worried about inflation. It's not as if it's not just it's not just
except that Rahul, but we have been for some time now in a benign inflationary regime, and so and also now I think we are in a period when there will be easing also of interest rates. That's coming. Inshallah. It's been happening and it's coming, and today we saw in the case of the US, the Fed, of course, as expected, brought down the rates in the US, which played havoc with the
stock markets. Okay, let me bring in also Mohandas Pai. We're analyzing the GDP slump, if you want to call it that. What's behind this?
Rahul, my view is it started in the fourth quarter of last year, and the first, the economy didn't grow because consumption fell down after liquidity constraints. In the first quarter of this year, I think I'm told by some friends, growth is only 5.6%. Second quarter is gone. We are halfway there and there's no growth. Third quarter, we don't see any upswing. This year we can write off. We may only reach 5.5, 5.7. We are in real bad shape. Now, what are the reasons? One reason is liquidity in the markets has dried up almost totally. People are not able to borrow money because the NBFCs had financed 23 lakh crores. They're withdrawing money to build up liquidity. The banks are not lending to them. There's a fear in the market of lending. Smaller companies are not getting money. The banks are giving to consumers, but it's not going, and the mood is very bad. The second reason is there is no response from the government for the last 2 or 3 months because there were elections, now there's a budget. There need to be response. Government has to listen to people and come out with a series of policies like Chetan did when we are in the Fragile Five or whatever. So we have to work it out. And the third important thing is we must work out how to accelerate investment because private sector investment has slumped this year. And like Surjit Bhalla said, it's because of high interest rates. Surjit has been the lone voice who's been talking about real interest rates for long. Today, for a small-scale industry, you borrow at about 14%, and if inflation is 3%, you're paying 11% interest rates. Can anybody survive by paying 11%? We have created a rentier economy where rent seekers prosper, industrialists who take risk don't get capital, and I think we have to sort it out. And low inflation is very good, but it's created a feeling that people are not seeing increase in income, and there is a negative feeling among consumers. So I think consumption has fallen off, investment in the private sector is down, government is not able to listen to us, and government investment is peaked. So I think we are in real trouble. We need some answers.
Okay, Sabina Dewan and Chetan Bhagat. Let me first come out to Sabina Dewan, who founded the Just Jobs Network. Sabina Dewan, obviously, when there is a slump such as this, and most people here agree, job scenario gets affected. Now, we'll come to that in just a few moments, but let's first talk about the reasons behind this. And do you believe that the government perhaps has been defensive about this and their own, and I don't want to use strong words, but culpability?
Thank you, Rahul, for that excellent question. I think the important thing to note is that economic growth is slowing down, and that is widely acknowledged and widely accepted. As you said, this is largely because of a slump in aggregate demand. People just aren't spending money. So the critical question that comes in is, why aren't people spending money? And with all due respect to my fellow macroeconomists that are speaking on the show today, I think we are not talking about one of the main reasons why people aren't spending money, and that is because of the poor jobs market. We have a jobs crisis in this country. People are caught in low productivity and poor wage jobs. And so if you're not making money, you're not going to spend money. And I think that is the bottom line. And there is a lot left to do in terms of job creation. On that front, I think this government has its work cut out for it.
Okay, Chetan Bhagat. Chetan Bhagat, you've heard Sabina, Dewan, you've heard, Surjit Bhalla,
Yeah.
Gurcharan Das, Mohandas Pai.
I heard everyone.
Your
Yes,
take?
Yes. Yeah. I think firstly, Rahul, I last met you at the count, we did this, I think, a month or so ago, and that time people weren't even agreeing if there is a slowdown.
That's true.
I think one thing we have consensus on is there is definitely a slowdown. I think the stock market is down. Other data and all comes from government agencies, so we don't know what is being managed. But the stock market performance is right in front of us, 10% down from the pre-budget peak, at a time where actually globally things are pretty okay. So, the US is growing at 3%, we are growing at 6%. The extra 3% growth that we offer is also at the cost of a lot of regulatory risks. For investors, the government will announce a super rich tax, which frankly is almost like a super achiever tax.
Yes.
Or which freaks people out. A lot of money is getting pulled out because of that. The government will, keep changing the GST rates. There is a certain tendency to punish the people doing well. Like people who are doing well and living well must be punished. Now, maybe there is an inherent sense of justice in that, and there is a Robin Hood strategy of governing the country. But, Robin Hood, while maybe he was respected and he could win elections, Robin Hood couldn't really make the town grow. Because India doesn't work in terms of you by taking from one and giving to the other. That's not how economies
Yeah, well, the
grow.
Shires needed
Actually, the rich people in the economy,
the Industrial Revolution, really. You're right. The Shires needed the Industrial Revolution. Those woods.
They create.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's... Yeah, exactly. So to carry on with that analogy, the government, and I'm not saying, and I think unfortunately it will become BJP Congress very soon in these debates, but basically, since we have not been a colony of the British, the government runs the country like a colony, which is like a strict teacher taking a strict and keeping everyone in check. Whereas we should be, the government should be more like a society secretary, like your building secretary, who is kind of the in charge, but not really beating everybody up with a stick and working with everyone.
Okay,
so this anti-profit, penalizing profit mentality has led to loss in confidence.
Okay, well, loss in confidence, but on the back of this, we have the government saying that by 2024, we are going to be a $5 trillion economy. Mr. Modi has publicized this, Dr. Rohit Raj, you're an economist, he's publicized this his ambitious goal very, very steadfastly. Now I want to ask you, do you see this happening, or is this one of those political slogans? We had one in the first year or first term, and now we have a second one.
Look, Rahul, one can promise the moon. So promising is not the big deal. The issue is, how do you go from here to there? You have to have a roadmap. Now, given the fact, as both of them said, that given the fact that the economy at the moment is not growing, to think of 5 years from now, suddenly it starts growing up without any policy decision from the government. And there I disagree a bit. Interest rates are important, there is no doubt about that. But interest rates alone do not matter, for a simple reason. If the factories are running below capacity, 70%, 65%, even if you bring the cost of loans down, that itself doesn't inject demand in the economy. You need to think in terms of structural things that you can do with the economy. What is the extra thing that you can insert? So you are in a vicious cycle. The only way to break out of a vicious cycle is injecting something new, and that seems to be missing. So I can, as I said, promise a hell lot of things, but how do you deliver?
Surjit Bhalla.
Look,
I want to ask you, this ambitious, 5 trillion. Now, look, I've got some numbers. You have to grow at 14.2% annually to get to it at current prices in 2022. Okay, 10%.
It's not 2022. The target is 24.
I know, 24. But I'm just saying, even if you wanted to.
No, I know those numbers.
Okay.
I'll help out everybody. I know those numbers very well.
Okay.
I've worked on them, and we talked about it on budget day itself.
True. Yeah.
Before I get to that, one point I want to make that Mohandas Pai pointed out about liquidity, and liquidity is very much associated. So I think both are aspects of the same monetary phenomena.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, I didn't realize, or maybe failure has many fathers, because Chetan said that 2 months ago nobody was thinking about a growth slowdown. So I don't know where Chetan has been, but on this show, on every place else. So I think everybody has acknowledged there's a growth slowdown. There has been a debate on jobs. I don't want to get there, but that, if Chetan says that there's whether job growth or not, that is controversial. But it is incontrovertible, well known, गली गली में शोध है कि growth slowdown हो गया और 6 महीने 9 महीने से ही शोध है. So that's the. Now we come to the important
government
point.
has been a little defensive on this point. I mean, it hasn't really stepped up and said that.
Both ways.
Okay.
We all accuse the government, including me, that you didn't publish the employment data.
It's true.
There are some interesting news on that, which we can do later.
Yeah, we'll come to
that. But the government publishes the GDP data, Baba.
Which has been called. I know you've written a whole piece on the methodology that Raghuram Rajan and the others sort of employed.
So
I think he's talking about that. Right?
Okay.
I mean, so there's no debate.
Okay, there's no debate. So you're fine with these numbers.
No. Now we come to these numbers.
Right.
Look, that target is for 2024, 25.
Yeah.
Let me just suggest a simple math. For the viewers and for all concerned who think we need a structural change or that something radical has to happen. First of all, the target is in dollars. Second, today, with the slow GDP growth, we are already at about $3 trillion.
Yes.
With the slow growth. Okay? Now, all it needs, there are two assumptions needed. If nominal GDP growth grows at 10, not 14 or whatever number you
10.
have,
right, 10.
grows at 10 and less than 10, we will be at 5 trillion economy if the exchange rate stays stable. The exchange rate is appreciated by about 10-15% already over the last year. Even if it stays at the same level, I think it will appreciate, and I'm writing on this even as we speak. Okay. So that is historical. We don't know what the future will hold, but we can see from the past.
Okay.
I wonder how many of the viewers and experts know that in 2002, the exchange rate was 42 rupees to the dollar.
That's true.
And in 2009, it was 42 rupees to the dollar. So for 7 years, and when we had higher inflation than the US, and this is the UPA regime, it was at 42. So from where from are you getting that the rupee has, that's where you get the 14, because experts, so-called experts, have said the exchange rate will depreciate by 3 to 4% a year. I think that is why I'm sorry to invoke my column. It's called No Proof Required, because in India, you don't need any evidence to make any claim.
Okay.
So if you provide me with the evidence, economic evidence, empirical evidence, not heuristic, and not I think so, and not this, then I will agree with you. So I think I hope that we won't get there if we are growing at 5.5%.
That's true. I mean,
and with inflation at 3, at 8.5%, we won't get there.
Okay.
No question.
Sabina, Dewan, you wanted to make a point. We missed you on that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you so much, Rahul. The point that I wanted to make was the question that was asked about what can we do about the slowing of growth. And I think the big elephant in the room is the fact that we have a fiscal deficit of 3.9, just below 4% of GDP. Now, during times like this, when there is a massive slowdown in economic growth and other economic indicators are also showing a decline, we cannot commit ourselves to this kind of fiscal deficit. There has this kind of fiscal discipline. We have to actually think about how do we make investments in the economy? How do we spend our way, to some extent, out of this problem in a very thoughtful way to give the injection of stimulus into the economy?
Okay, that's interesting. I just want to get to these two figures and I'll come right back because I know you want to interject on this. The second and the third symptoms related in some ways, sluggish auto sector, which has been worrying some of our experts. Those are the numbers, viewers. Car dealers shut in the last 18 months, 286. Jobs impacted, 32,000 in a year and a half. 36% dip, in the highest in 20 years in Maruti's July sales, just to take an example. There are many reasons for it, and we're going to discuss those. Industrial growth hit, again, the numbers are on your screens, viewers. They don't need me to read them out. You can read them for yourself. 8 sectors have 40.27% weightage in the IIP, and that's the index. That's how it's been performing. Gurcharan Das, why?
No, I'm coming back to the question you asked Surjit and to Sabina, and that's the question about the target of 5 trillion and what do we need to do to get to that target. And he's right that the fact is that the government has not given a roadmap to that target. But to me, more than even a roadmap is a statement of the major, what I would call a mindset change that we need. You know, when Modi got elected in 2014, we thought there was a new mindset that was coming when he talked about Achhe Din and jobs and what it was going to bring. And we got very frightened, in fact, in the last couple of years, especially during the election. The rhetoric of the election changed to the same Garibi Hatao rhetoric. So that mindset needs to go back to Amiri Lao, not Garibi Hatao. Now, it's not just a slogan. Amiri Lao is exactly what Deng Xiaoping promised to the Chinese. He says, don't worry, there will always be poor people in every society.
At every time.
At every time. Focus on what will raise everybody up. And therefore, when Rahul Gandhi's jibe about Soot Boot Sarkar in the last government got Modi defensive, what Modi's answer should have been is that, look, I want everybody in India to aspire to the lifestyle and ease and comfort of a suit boot person. You don't have to wear a suit boot, but you can aspire to what that brings. So I think that's a very important mindset change, and what we are doing is really going back to the 2014 promises.
Okay, so how do we get there?
So
what's the roadmap?
A couple of quick. You see, if you want to accept that mindset, then you must accept another mindset change. And that is, since the 1950s, we've had this mindset of export pessimism. And this government seems to have returned to that same mindset, and therefore tariffs have gone up, and this sort of protectionism has come in. And so you need to get back to being a country. I mean, agriculture in India is a major export item, and yet we don't give the farmers the credit for we keep changing our policy. Export, start, stop.
So
quick, one more.
Export pessimism.
Export pessimism. Third one, I think, has been sort of alluded to, is the one the Chetan Bhagat talked about. Is, you know, I have never seen investor sentiment ever so weak as this time. And so I really think that now that we are suffering from an NPA cleanup. where NBFCs are in survival mode. So there are a lot of things that are wrong. But a lot of these are self-induced.
Okay.
In the way we treat the business person is, unlike China, which gives a red carpet to its investors, we wrap up our investors in red tape.
Okay.
And so we give them red tape.
Well, your words will echo because of the unfortunate happenings of the last week. Now, we've had someone, a great hope, called the coffee magnate of this country, the coffee baron, what have you, India's rival to Starbucks, he's committed suicide. There's been a lot of talk in Mohandas Pai. Whether it's the pessimism around exports or the hesitation in endorsing Amiri Lau, or perhaps even, trying to boost investor sentiment by, in some way shoring up the hemlines, what do you think it's going to take? Are you in sync with Gurcharan Das? Do you disagree with him? Do you think we need, as Rohit Azad is saying, some sort of deep surgery?
Rahul, my view is sentiments by investors and sentiments by entrepreneurs is down for the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, being an investor, talking to hundreds of companies, compliance burden has gone up massively. There is a fear psychosis among industrialists. They're not opening their mouth. They're scared. Tax terrorism has gone rampant. You saw what happened to VG Siddhartha, that kind of harassment. And you saw the response of the IT department. They're justifying all that. They didn't have to justify. All they had to do is just to say, we feel sad about what happened, and we assure you we'll treat you with respect. They didn't have to give any details, trying to blacken him, spoil his reputation. Now, this anti-business attitude has pervaded Delhi. And Delhi, many of the bureaucrats and some politicians feel that a businessman is a crook, all businessmen are crook, you must go after them, blah, blah, blah. And communication between government and business has broken down. I've been to Bombay in the last 3 weeks many times, spoken to many people. I've never seen the mood so down. I've never seen, morale so down as I see now, and people have almost given up hope. That's why I would like the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister to sit down with industry and find out what needs to be done, because we have to improve the emotional content. We have to pull people up. The morale has to go up. People have to feel positive. Unless industry feels positive, people feel positive, things are not going to improve whatever you do, because everything is done by people.
Okay.
And the Finance Minister's response to the FBI matter, saying that, look, they can change into a company, it's collateral damage by the CBT chairman, was unnecessary. What are the message you're sending? You're not wanted, we do what you want, and who cares? We don't care for you. That's a totally wrong attitude.
I can just quickly, can I give you a couple of examples? One happened 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
Two days ago, you must have read about it. They have criminalized CSR.
That's
In
true.
other words,
Yes,
here is an activity, first of all, that I should do voluntarily.
And it shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I want to engage in philanthropy. I should engage in philanthropy. But to tell somebody you are not engaging in philanthropy, and therefore I'm going to put you for 3 years in jail. Can you believe the kind of mindset that's behind such an idea? Or if Mohandas Pai would know about it, now that angel tax is gone. But what was the kind of mindset that brought about the angel tax?
So, Chetan Bhagat, look, the government would come back and say, look, the gap between the rich and poor, and this is a discussion that is happening even now in America, in the thick of the presidential elections. One leading Democratic contender has come out and said that we must have a super, super, super rich tax. And this kind of narrative where the poor have even less than they did 20 years ago and the rich have even more than they have. I mean, people are talking about wealth tax now in the United States. And I'm talking about Elizabeth Warren's campaign. Now, I want to ask you, I mean, how do you square, as a government, poor people, you don't want the pitchforks to come out. I'm sorry I'm using a revolutionary term here, straight out of, and before that, the French Revolution. But that's the fact. What do you do?
No, but America, for all its socialist talk, remains a very, very capitalist country. I mean, there is no doubt, there is no comparison. Actually, if you look at the mindset there towards big business, they have created big companies. All the biggest companies of the world have been created. The biggest companies of the world are new. The Fortune 500 list there keeps changing. So despite all this socialist talk, the fundamental ethos is of respecting talent, respecting achievement, respecting hard work, respecting and earning profit. I mean, yeah, okay, they may differ on what tax rate.
Yeah, but big business in India, and I'm sorry to say this,
but
has also, look, I mean, they have taken capital out of this country. I mean, a government.
They've taken capital out of this country most likely because the policies in this country encourage taking capital out.
Well, okay. So are you saying that if the tax rate were to suddenly fall, Indian investors, Indian business people would sort of be more law-abiding? Are you suggesting that? I mean,
I'm
look, there's no anecdotal evidence.
I definitely.
What is wrong with wealth tax? I mean, why should there not be wealth tax?
First of all, sir, it's very difficult to calculate it. I mean, you need a whole new tax department.
If I can, let me just finish my point. If there is a dramatic rise in inequality, and this has been talked about extensively in the last 20, 30 years, across the world there has been a rise in inequality, including India. If there is a rise in inequality, there has to be some way in which you address that, not because simply that you want to
CSR? No. Do you think that's a way forward?
Just let me finish. If you could just let me finish. When we are discussing
the fact that... Let him finish. I'll come back to both of you. I'll come back to both of you. Let him finish.
Yeah. When we are discussing the fact that you do not have enough demand in the economy, where exactly is the demand going to come from? Not from moon. It's going to come from the people of this country. If the inequality rises, an automatic effect of that, as Sabina also said it, is a decline in demand. This is macro 101.
Okay.
If that is the case, then inequality is not just about taking money from the rich and distributing it to the poor. Not only that, even for growth, that is an important factor, and hence you cannot take it just independent of taking this position about. I personally think taxes should be there. There should be equality, as much of equality as possible in the economy, and this is one way of addressing it. I'm not saying you should have same income for everybody, not that, but this has a
close approximation thereof.
Okay, so Chetan Bhagat, the government wants to...
There is nothing wrong with equality.
He made a very, again, a factual
Rahul,
error.
if I could come in.
Factual error. Okay, one second.
Inequality across the world going up, and there's incontrovertible is what you implied.
Evidence, yeah.
I hate to sort of, and I dislike when others quote their own studies, but a book was published in 2002, Imagine There's No Country, and it was vetted, it was looked at by all the people, including Gurcharan, Das, etc., which showed that inequality in the world, first of all, was back to about 1875 levels, the world inequality, and it showed that Indian inequality from 1983 to 2011-12, we don't have the consumer expenditure survey for 2017-18, stayed the same. So, second, one last point. Okay, so we can throw away anything we want.
No,
also, wait a second. I just want to ask you.
Okay, one second.
I just want to ask you. Since you're in support of the wealth tax, are you in support of what this government has done, which is that the rich pay something like 42% tax? I just want to know your take on that.
If the inequality is rising, I don't mind that.
I'm saying, Baba, you say inequality is
absolutely.
So you are in favor of a 43% tax on the rich.
Tax. There's nothing wrong with taxation.
And why not 50%?
See, I'll see.
One second.
Have it as much as you want. That's not the point.
We do forget. No, hang on. We do forget that, and I want to come back to you, Chetan Bhagat. There are a lot of the social democracies in Northern Europe did tax their citizens and perhaps continue to tax their citizens.
They have very high
at very high levels. I mean, I don't know.
Corporate tax rate. Why don't we look at the corporate tax rate? These are the rich people, and the corporate tax rate, effective tax rate in most of the world is around 20-25%.
Okay, so let him come in. Let him come in. Okay, gentlemen, let Chetan Bhagat come in. Let Chetan Bhagat come in. He's on a link. He's out of the studio. And Sabina Dewan. Yes, Chetan Bhagat. Go ahead.
Two, three things. two, three things on it. And I have worked in an investment bank for 11 years, and I've seen how global investors think and operate. So I'm coming from that place, also my understanding of India. Firstly, can you tax the people in Dubai? Can the government say that there's too much inequality? Can the people in Dubai pay tax to us? We can't, right?
No.
So if the Indian moves to Dubai, and you can't tax them. So you can go around town saying something must be done, the wealth tax must be added, this tax, super achiever tax must be added, you have a Mercedes tax must be added, and you use your air conditioner tax must be added, and you can keep justifying it. But the day that guy moves to Dubai, whatever you are getting is completely gone. Okay, so the competition is not with Scandinavia with 70% tax. The competition is with the competitive tax countries, because we are trying to attract those people. So stop quoting the highest tax countries in the world, because that's not how people are thinking. People are thinking, where can I live where I have a low tax rate? So you have to compete with that. That's why we've reduced the corporate tax rate. So the same logic applies. Secondly, whenever there is a percentage tax, the rich guys are anyway paying more. If you have 30% tax, anyway it's percentage. It's not a fixed amount. So you are capturing some of that wealth that he's creating. But to say that he needs to pay a higher rate, that does get excessive, and that can be argued, and you can do that to a limit. But the moment at which you become uncompetitive, which is what we are becoming now, and so even if he was paying 30%, now because it's 43 and he says, you know what, let's pack our babs and move to Dubai, which is 2 hours, 3 hours away from Delhi.
Okay, so this is self-defeating.
That 30% is also gone.
Okay,
now,
self-defeating.
Are you going to tell that guy Scandinavia has very high tax?
Give me 30 seconds.
Now, last thing. Last thing. Just there is a mentality. There is a mentality in India, because I think we Indians grow up with so little. We Indians grow up with so less, so much competition, that we have a scarcity mentality. That the way to give to someone is to take from someone else.
Right.
Actually, money is made, wealth is created, and money is made by incentivize people to make money. Incentivizing entrepreneurs, incentivizing people who know how to make money.
Okay.
Adding fuel to their tanks.
Okay.
That's how they make money.
Okay.
And then when money is made, when more cakes are made, the more pieces to be given out. But the scarcity mentality in India is
scarcity mentality. You've got a lot of words, big words. Sabina Dewan.
Rahul.
Sabina Dewan.
My goodness, Rahul, I don't even know where to start with poking the holes in Chetan's logic. I mean, the idea that we are creating this scarcity mentality is somehow leading to an overtaxing of rich people is completely flawed logic. I mean, if Chetan would have his way, the government would be beholden to the country's rich people, and I think that's a completely ridiculous logic. I'm sorry, Chetan, I like you, but this is just ridiculous. I think that the discussion has become so overly exaggerated around taxing the rich, when the reality is that we need to be making investments in the economy that will spur economic growth, and that is through harnessing the productive potential of people, right? Unless we are making the kinds of investments in infrastructure that this government has said that it wants to do, unless we're investing in education and healthcare, things that allow our economy to progress, we will not be able to realize our growth potential. And how do you pay for that? There is no question that we have to consider tax policy in order to be able to raise the revenue to make the investments in the economy.
Look, what Sabina is saying
and that's
is motherhood.
The fundamental thing.
Okay, I'm sorry, Sabina.
You cannot pay for these things. Hang on, Surjit, hang on. You cannot pay for these things. You cannot pay for these things without raising taxes. It's impossible. And so let's not have this discussion about exaggerating about how much
this needs to be addressed, just like I addressed my good friend over here.
Okay.
I mean, who says that infrastructure shouldn't be invested in?
Sure.
Who says education shouldn't be invested in? Who says healthcare shouldn't be invested in? Who says sanitation shouldn't be invested in?
Yeah.
Who says we should not redistribute money?
Well, where do you get the money?
Look,
let's come back to the...
That's not a policy.
That's the elephant in the room.
So the fundamental question is where are you going to get the money?
Where do you get the money?
And the answer, I'm sorry to say, this is where I disagree with her.
Yeah.
The answer to that is not to tax the rich more.
Okay.
You believe, first of all, the record of the Laffer curve in India. India is quoted as the best example in the world of the Laffer curve working, which means that as you brought down the tax rates from 1977 onwards, 1997 onwards, your earnings, the government's coffers began to fill up. That's how you got the money. And so my only other point, I think, that we were talking here is the reason I don't like to talk about inequality is that
Isn't that another simplistic assumption? Because, our industrial base at that time was small. I mean, look, we've liberalized, in whichever way, in whichever capacity we have after 91. So one would have expected more business activity and therefore more tax returns and so on and so forth. And there is compliance. So you've got that. Yeah.
You've got that.
So the government had elbow room to also bring down
but
taxes.
I just want to see a linguistic problem here that we have amongst ourselves. Yeah. The answer for India is not, don't look at inequality. Okay. Don't even use the word inequality. What Indians want is opportunity. Exactly. Now, opportunity comes precisely through growth, through jobs, through education, through health. Now, you pay for education and health through growth. So it is brute growth. And those people who say, oh, but we've had jobless growth are also talking rubbish.
But the government also wants inclusive growth. I mean, look, you can't, look, the government doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's answerable to people, and people vote. And that's where the conundrum deepens, Mr. Bhalla. I mean, look, you've been in government, you know the thinking, you know that you just can't sort of, open the, or, let loose the animal spirits without thinking of the bottom 10%. I mean, we know that trickle down hasn't happened.
No. So what's the question?
The bottom
So how do we do it? Look, I mean, you need money to look after them.
So that is, I mean, I don't know what we're arguing. Okay. Honestly, I really do not know.
Right.
India, whether you look at the UPA or we look at the NDA from 93 onwards and from 82 onwards, 83 onwards, has a very good record on poverty alleviation. Indeed, one of the best in the world and better than that of China. The core, China may be richer, but consumption, which is how, especially for the poor, you define poverty, is only 36% of GDP. In India, consumption is 60% of the GDP.
That's true.
So, first, our record is very, very good. Exceptional, truly exceptional, regardless of which government was there.
Right.
So we have continuously been making an effort to address the bottom 40, 50%. Point number one. Point number two, this government also made a substantial effort in addressing the bottom 50, 70%, which is why I think they won in 2019.
Yeah.
Third, we have, with the original topic of discussion, we have a growth slowdown. If we continue to grow at this rate, and we can look in, and some of the arguments that we have discussed, tax the rich, do this, morality, I've constantly stated, please move morality out. It is very good on a cocktail party conversation, and you can have orange drink then as well. You can discuss morality. But please keep it out. Please keep it out of economic discussions.
It has nothing to do with morality. You give a prescription other than monetary policy. You don't need to give up. It's a debate. So
I give up in the debate.
Okay, fair enough. Then you're conceding the point. But no, absolutely. So when
I don't think the point is worth discussing.
Okay, so look,
fair enough. I mean,
let me just step in here. I think this is, look, you can be agent provocateur to Ms. Dewan and Azad, Dr. Azad, but look, I think someone needs to begin to bell the cat. And if it's Surjit Bhalla and Gurcharan Das and perhaps even Chetan Bhagat who say for a moment, and Mr. Mohan Das Pai, let's suspend morality for a moment, just for a blinding second. Let's suspend it and let's talk really about, I don't know, laissez-faire economics. Let's get into a conservative mode, growth, unbridled, eschew, morality, and get in with it. What's the harm? What's the harm? So let me ask that question now of two people who have been conscientious objectors on this debate. Sabina, Dewan, what is the problem with that line very quickly, and I want to end this debate on the two gentlemen, on Dewan and Dr. Azad. Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rahul. Absolutely. I don't think that morality is a bad word, but to argue that the points that we are making are on the basis of morality, I take, I don't appreciate that, because it's not true. I have been making economic points, right? We've had economic growth, and yet we've seen an uptick in unemployment. Our informal employment is still stubbornly high at almost 68, 69%. We're seeing contractualization going up. People are caught in low productivity and poor wages. These are economic indicators. So we've had economic growth, and yet we are still seeing that these have not translated into higher living standards for people. Surjit says we've had poverty reduction, and yet most people are one emergency away, one health emergency away from falling back into poverty. These are not moral issues. These are facts, and they're economic facts. And the bottom line is we need to find the revenue from somewhere to make the difficult and hard investments in the economy that we need to propel the economy onto a sustainable growth path. There's no debate there. It's not about morality, it's about economics. But I can face off with the best of them on the economics.
Well, Dr. Azad.
Quite aside from the very important points that Sabina has made, let's say that we actually think in terms of laissez-faire, and that we say that, okay, no morality, we simply give it to the rich because they are the ones who are creating jobs.
Give it to the rich.
I'm not saying
hand it over to the entrepreneur.
I'm saying, let's say,
I think that's an extrapolation.
I'm not saying you said that. I'm saying, let's say we think in terms.
That, to be fair.
Can I just finish?
No, because don't say wrong things.
You did the same. You did.
Okay.
Anyway, so even if we do that, let's say the rich, they can produce in the economy only if they see demand in the economy. So the point that Sabina made, quite irrespective of what is happening on it's not a morality issue. Simply, why would I produce in an economy which is not generating profits for me? So a simple thing as that, which requires demand to be created, you are in a vicious cycle.
So we've
need to turn that.
Viewers, the one thing I haven't told you as I sign off is that this is not a one-off debate, by the way. We're going to be back next week. We've identified the symptoms. We haven't still got into the meatiest part of this discussion, which is how do we eradicate the disease? We've identified the symptoms. How do we get over this hurdle? And we are going to be back next week, another edition of these debates, to look at the cure. We leave it at that for now.